don't remember. I I had a nice meal. I had wonderful company. So it was a very enjoyable evening. But what made the evening so special was our waiter. Now, most wait staff do a good job. Occasionally, you get some who are just doing their job. And of course, there are those whom customers are a complete and utter nuisance. Our waiter that evening was in his early 20s. I don't remember his name. But what was so different was how he took care of his tables and his underlying attitude. So this young man clearly loved serving. And I spoke to him briefly about it. Some of his coworkers confirmed this for me. He said that he just loved to serve. And while he brought us our dinner and we filled our water glasses and showed us the dessert menu, he did it in such an appreciative manner, as though being able to take care of us was a wonderful treat, that it just made his day being able to bring us our dinner. And the best way that I can picture it is imagining the way a mother might feel if a much loved child whom she hasn't seen in years and who will only be home for a short time is there. And there's almost a happy intensity. Can I get you anything, sweetheart? This young man was doing his job, but in a way that felt that he was glad to do it, and he would do it even if he didn't get paid. He truly enjoyed serving people at his restaurant. There wasn't anything over the top. It wasn't weird or creepy. It was magnificent. And even though it happened a number of years ago, I am still touched by it. Yeah, amazing. As religious people, we often say we want to be of service. Most folks want to make a difference in the world. It is connected to having a purpose. So what exactly is service? Well, there are a lot of definitions in the dictionary, a lot of research on it. But for the sake of today's sermon, service is about providing an intangible benefit to others. And service is a transaction. So it involves giving something immaterial and receiving something material or intangible back. And even altruistic service, we expect that to make us feel better about ourselves. So there's a transaction. Our society, you think about high service and low service. So there's a hierarchy of sorts. There are servants, often at the lower end of the ladder, whose benefits are immaterial. We might not even notice that they're done, but we do notice when they aren't done. Think about waste management or people who stock the shelves. And it's interesting to note that during this time of pandemic, the servants at the lower end of our social status are our essential workers. Our civilization cannot function without them. And at the top of the hierarchy are the experts and the professionals. And they also provide incorporeal benefits to others. These people and their services hold a particular authority. And those receiving their industry are expected to be compliant with their suggestions and directions and respect what they bring to the table. These service workers are accorded more esteem. As religious and spiritual people, we certainly want to be of service. We want our ways of making a difference in the world to be positive. I want the services that I provide to be good for the recipients and for me. And it's important to know how to provide good service. So let's take just a moment and talk about what is not good service. For starters, let's be honest about service. It is a transaction. So even when we do something and we don't expect anything back, we do. It just might take different forms. Think of all the business and corporations declaring their determination to provide excellent, exceptional, extraordinary service. And all of them expect financial gain. Services are worth something. Service has value. And it's the same for individuals. Joseph Goldstein writes of an experience that happened while he was meditating in India. There were a lot of beggars around, and one little boy was holding out his hand, and he looked so hungry. So I took one of the oranges I had bought, and I gave it to him. It felt good to respond to him, but he just took the orange and walked away. Not a smile, not a nod, not a thank you, nothing. And it was only when he did that, in the absence of a response, did I see clearly that some part of my mind, my generosity, some part of my motive had wanted an acknowledgement. I had not been expecting effusive thanks for the orange, but I had wanted something. And this child just took the orange and walked away. Most of us know this feeling. Nothing is totally free. We at least want a response, or to feel better about ourselves, or to know that a ripple of goodness has gone out into the world when we have done something. When there's no reciprocation, we feel cheated. I quit giving gifts or money to people who didn't say thank you. So as we examine service, let us disabuse ourselves of the lofty ideal that we serve others purely from our hearts. And if we're honest about what we expect from our services, we can be more intentional about our giving. So more on that later. But if we truly want to be of service to others, the very first rule is don't help and don't fix. Most of us are helpers, and we fix things because we want our loved ones to feel better. Helping carries the connotation that something is wrong or someone is broken, things are not right, and they need to be restored. And most of us are fixers. Think about how difficult it is to sit and just listen to someone complain or talk about their problem, to sit and listen and not want to solve it or give advice or suggestions or go and make it better. I am an extraordinarily fortunate woman because I have a husband who's actually willing to just sit and listen to me and not fix anything. Anytime we try to fix someone, no matter how genuine our motive, the message that we are sending to them is that they can't handle the situation. It's up to us to take care of it for them. And there are times that might be greatly appreciated. There might be an appropriate once in a while where someone really is in a pickle and they can't handle it and we step in. But generally, if we help or we fix on a regular basis, it leads to resentment on both sides. So the fixee comes to understand that the fixer believes that they can't manage things. And even if the fixer does all of this in love and with words of care, the nonverbal message is, you need me. You don't have what it takes to get by on your own. And after a time, the one doing the fixing and carrying all that burden begins to feel overwhelmed. Things get enmeshed. and both sides feel resentful. So a quick illustration. When I worked at the Hazleton Rehabilitation Center for Drug and Alcohol, the patients who had the hardest time recovering were those that had, and I'll put it in quotes, very loving, very helpful friends and family. So the parents that always bailed them out of jail, or bought them new cars when they wrapped the last one around a tree, or the spouses that would call the boss to explain that the patient wouldn't be coming in to work that day. Sometimes this kind of help is called enabling. It's not service. When others don't step in to help, and when they allow their loved ones to experience consequences, it's called tough love. And the message it sends is better than any new car. Because that message is, we believe you can handle the tough stuff. You don't need us to save you. If you feel the urge to help someone, stop and check and be really honest with yourself. Is there any part of you that quietly feels or thinks that this person can't manage, or that the consequences are just unbearable? Stop. There are ways to serve someone without diminishing them or puffing out ourselves. And sacrifice is like helping on steroids. And in this case, the one doing the giving seldom wins. So I will stand here as a heretic and claim that even religious sacrifice is harmful, because sacrifice leads to resentment. Sacrifice is often based on unexpressed expectations. So if we sacrifice ourselves for someone or something, on some level, we believe that they owe us. Let's say I sacrifice my weekend for Bob. We're going to go do something that he wants to do, and I give up my plans. And I might, trying to be a good partner and a more spiritual person, say nothing to Bob about this being a sacrifice for me. Yet, unbeknownst to Bob, he owes me. And if instead I make my sacrifice known with loud sighs and snide comments, he will know that he owes me, but he still won't know what he owes me. Usually, when we forfeit something for another, we expect something in return. The problem is, we don't tell the other that they're indebted to us, and we might not even admit it to ourselves. In fact, we rarely even know what it is that they owe us until they don't come through. Though it doesn't sound selfless or romantic, try discussing the expectations beforehand. Talk it out. What will one partner get if they put their career on hold to support their other partner through med school? If they talk about it, then they are less apt to feel so cheated if the relationship ends after the education. Sacrifice is not service. Kind of reminds me of the story of two men who sat down at the table for dinner. And at the center of the table was a platter of nicely prepared fish. Two fish. One was large, the other small. And the first man served himself, and he took the big fish and then passed the partner to the second man. And the second man took the smaller fish, and he said, "Why didn't you offer the fish to me first?" "Well, what would have happened if I did?" The second man answered. Well, the second man said, pretty haughtily, I would have taken the smaller fish. And the second man lowered his eyes for a moment, and looking up, he said brightly, either way, you would have gotten the smaller fish. Martyrdom isn't service. In contrast, good service puts people on equal footing. My very favorite reading about service comes from Rachel Naomi Remen. She says, true service is not a relationship between an expert and a problem. It is far more genuine than that. It's a relationship between people who bring the full resources of their combined humanity to the table and share them generously. Many times when we help, we do not really serve. Those who help see life differently from those who serve and may affect the life differently as well. It's hard not to see the person you are helping as someone weaker than yourself, someone needy. And when we help, we are aware of our strength because we're using it. And others become aware of our strength as well and might feel diminished by it. But we do not serve with our strength. We serve with ourselves. Over the years, I have discovered that everything I know serves, and everything that I am serves. I have served people impeccably with parts of myself that embarrass me, parts of which I am ashamed. The wholeness in me serves the wholeness in others and the wholeness in life. The wholeness in you is as worthy as the wholeness in me. Service is a relationship between two equals. And a helping relationship may incur a sense of debt, but service, like healing, is mutual. Service is free from debt. The wholeness of me is strengthened, as is the wholeness in you. And everyone involved is fortunate to have had the chance to participate. In helping, we might find a sense of satisfaction. In serving, we have an experience of gratitude. That's the kind of service I think about when I remember my Red Lobster dinner. That feeling of such gratitude from this guy feeding us. So, what is good service? Well, it starts with awareness. What do we see that needs attention? Everything. Okay, well, what can I do? What are my skills and talents? What can I bring to the table? Ruth Gendler reminds us, service never asks you to do what you cannot do, but only what you most truly can. And while we're discerning what we can do, we need to factor in our energy and time and other commitments. Sure, we can see things and we can always step it up and do more and give more because there's always more to do. But when we give beyond our limits, resentment comes, not to mention burnout. The last 20 years has produced an entire ministry on helping us make sure our well is full. Make sure that we put on the airplane mask first. And it's excellent advice, and it's difficult to follow. But on a more practical note, have you ever received service from someone who was underpaid, overworked, and their mind was somewhere else? We've all had experiences when not receiving the service would have been preferable than getting it. Like the time I sat down in the chair of an angry hairdresser. Earlier, I talked about paying attention. Service and ministry are like that. They're about small things. William Blake said, if one is to do good, It must be in minute particulars. It doesn't have to be a big deal. I rather liked that religious service, known as ministry, starts out with the word mini. And it's actually from the Latin word minor for small. So as a minister, I don't get to be all puffed up because I'm about many things, small things to do for others. Two of my favorite Mother Teresa quotes are, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love." It's not how much we give, but how much love we put into the giving. We all know that service is something that brings us out of ourselves. Caring for one another, we sometimes glimpse an essential quality of our own being. We might be sitting alone, lost in self-doubt or self-pity, when the phone rings with a call from a friend who is really depressed. And instinctively, we come out of ourselves just to be with her and say a few reassuring words. And when we're done and a little comfort has been shared, we put down the phone and we feel a little more at home with ourselves. We're reminded of who we are and what we really have to offer each other. It's helpful to remember that being of service to others is not always about being nice. And it's not even always good about feeling good. One of the hard truths of good care may mean walking with people into the hard places or saying the difficult thing. The parent who always gives into the child, or the instructor who gives everybody A's, or the Pollyanna who just wants everybody to look on the bright side of things, are not being of service. Loving service does not take the easy way out. There's a chemotherapy nurse in a children's cancer ward whose job it is to pry for any available vein in an often emaciated arm to give infusions of chemicals that last sometimes as long as 12 hours and which are quite uncomfortable for the child. He is probably the greatest pain giver the children meet in their stay in the hospital. Because he has worked so much with his own pain, his heart is open. And he works with his responsibilities in the hospital as a laying on of hands with love and acceptance. There is so little in him that causes him to withdraw from the pain of others, things that reinforce the painfulness of experience for the children. He is warm and he's open and he's a place that encourages them to trust whatever they feel. And it is he whom the children often ask for at the time that they're dying. So even though this man is the pain giver, he's also the main love giver. Service is a big deal, even when it's not. Maxine Dennis is a cashier in a supermarket. And though that might not seem like a real rewarding position to most people, it is to her. And she writes, "You see, I feel that my job consists of a lot more than ringing up orders and taking people's money and bagging their groceries. The most important part of my job is not the obvious. Rather, it's the manner in which I present myself to others that will determine whether my customers leave the store feeling better or worse because of their brief encounter with me. For doing my job well, I know I have a chance to do God's work too. And because of this, I try to make each of my customers feel special. When I'm serving them, they become the most important people in my life." One final but short word about service. It's important that we receive service graciously. Remember, it's a transaction. So even if it's just for a short while, it's also a relationship. When we try to give and it's brushed aside or resisted or ignored, that can hurt. Not when it's about helping, but when this is genuine service. Appropriate service that is fought or rejected devalues the person offering it. Refusing to accept what others often is egocentric and arrogant, even though you might not think so. What is so special about you that you can't receive what everybody else needs? Excellent service puts us on equal ground as giver and receiver. For the next week, I invite you to notice service. How much service do you do for others? How much is given to you? How does it feel? Are you equal peers on this planet, or is there a hierarchy? So for this whole week, notice and pay attention to all that you can about service and your relationship to it. And then the week after that, make any tweaks or big adjustments that will make service better, more spiritual, more loving, more enjoyable for you and for others. The best service involves connection and joy, and you have a lot of control around that. Finally, I leave you with this nugget from John Oberg. If you can't do great things, Mother Teresa used to say, do little things with great love. If you can't do them with great love, do them with a little love. If you can't do them with a little love, do them anyway. Love grows when people serve. May you serve and be served in grace, love, and good humor. Amen and amen. So Chuck, I think this is the part